What if I told you that a single piece of paper could destroy everything you thought you knew about your life? For Sheriff Michael Carter, that paper was a DNA test. It was supposed to be a routine check, a way to quiet the nagging doubts that had plagued him for years. But what he discovered was far worse than he could have ever imagined. His younger brother, David, the man he had trusted, the man he had grown up with, was the biological father of his 3 children. The betrayal was absolute. The family he had loved, the life he had built, was a lie. And in that moment, something inside Michael snapped. This is the story of how a simple DNA test led to a double murder, a shattered family, and a quiet town forever scarred by the secrets it tried to bury. Stay with me, because what unfolds next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about trust, loyalty, and the lengths people will go to when pushed to the edge. Subscribe now for more shocking true crime stories. Trust me, you won't believe how this one ends. Nestled in the heart of the Midwest, the small town of Willow Creek was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. It was a community built on trust, where neighbors looked out for one another and life moved at a slower, more predictable pace. At the center of it all was Sheriff Michael Carter, a man known for his integrity, his dedication to justice, and his unwavering commitment to keeping Willow Creek safe. To the townspeople, Michael was more than just a sheriff. He was a friend, a confidant, and a symbol of stability in an ever-changing world. But behind the badge and the uniform, Michael was also a family man. He had a loving wife, Sarah, a woman known for her kindness and her warm smile. Together, they had built a life filled with love and laughter, raising 3 beautiful children, Emma, their spirited and independent teenage daughter, Jake, their curious and thoughtful 10-year-old son, and Lily, their youngest, a bubbly and mischievous little girl who brought joy to everyone she met. From the outside, the Carters were the epitome of the perfect family. Their home was a sanctuary, a place where love and happiness seemed to flourish without end. But as with any family, there were secrets, small, hidden truths that no one dared to speak aloud. Over time, Michael began to notice subtle changes in Sarah. She had become distant, her smiles a little too forced, her laughter a little too hollow. There were moments when she would avoid his gaze, her eyes filled with something he couldn't quite place, guilt, perhaps, or fear. And then there were the children. Emma, once so full of life, had started acting out, her behavior becoming increasingly erratic. Jake, usually so talkative, had grown quiet, retreating into himself in ways that worried Michael. And Lily, sweet, innocent Lily, had begun to resemble someone else, a fact that Michael couldn't ignore no matter how hard he tried. It was a thought that gnawed at him, a question that refused to be silenced. Was it paranoia, or was there something more to his suspicions? Determined to put his doubts to rest, Michael made a decision, one that would change the course of his life forever. He decided to take a DNA test, a simple, straightforward way to confirm what he already believed to be true. But what Michael didn't know was that this decision would unravel the very fabric of his family, exposing a truth so devastating, so unimaginable, that it would leave Willow Creek forever scarred. This is the story of how one man's search for answers led to a double murder, a shattered family, and a town left grappling with the fallout of secrets that were never meant to see the light of day. It all started with a simple DNA test, but what Michael discovered would change everything. Stay with me, because what happens next will leave you questioning how well you truly know the people closest to you. For weeks, Michael had waited anxiously for the results of the DNA test. He told himself it was just a formality, a way to quiet the doubts that had been gnawing at him for years. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. The way Sarah had been acting, the way the children seemed to carry secrets of their own, it all pointed to a truth he wasn't sure he was ready to face. When the email finally arrived, Michael hesitated. He sat at his kitchen table, the glow of his laptop casting shadows across his face. With a deep breath, he opened the results. The words on the screen hit him like a punch to the gut. The test confirmed what he had feared most: his younger brother, David, was the biological father of all three of his children. The man he had trusted, the man he had grown up with, had betrayed him in the worst way possible. Memories flooded Michael's mind: David and Sarah laughing together at family gatherings, the way David always seemed to be around when Michael was working late, the subtle glances between them that Michael had brushed off as nothing. Now, it all made sense. The betrayal was absolute, and the anger that surged through Michael was unlike anything he had ever felt. He confronted David in a dimly lit barn on the outskirts of town. The air was thick with tension as the two brothers stood face to face, their voices low and trembling with emotion. David didn't deny it. He admitted to the affair with Sarah, claiming it had been going on for years. He tried to explain, to justify his actions, but Michael wasn't listening. The man he had once called his brother was now a stranger, a traitor who had destroyed everything Michael held dear. In a fit of rage, Michael grabbed his gun, his hands shaking as he pointed it at David. The barn fell silent, the only sound the faint rustling of hay in the wind. But before Michael could pull the trigger, something stopped him. He lowered the gun, his breath ragged, his mind racing. He walked away, leaving David standing there, alone and trembling. But the story doesn't end there. What happened next would shock the entire town and leave the Carter family forever changed. The days following the confrontation between Michael and David were tense and heavy with unspoken emotions. Michael returned home after the explosive encounter in the barn, his mind a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. He couldn't bring himself to look at Sarah, who seemed to sense that something was terribly wrong but didn't dare ask. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt like a prison, its walls closing in on him with every passing moment. Michael spent hours replaying the confrontation in his mind. David's confession echoed in his ears, each word a fresh stab of pain. He thought about the years of lies, the countless family gatherings where David had stood by his side, pretending to be the loyal brother while secretly betraying him in the most intimate way possible. The betrayal wasn't just about Sarah, it was about the children, Emma, Jake, and Lily, whom Michael had loved and raised as his own. Now, he couldn't look at them without feeling a pang of doubt and resentment. Were they truly his, or were they just reminders of David's deception? Meanwhile, David was consumed by guilt and fear. He knew he had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The look in Michael's eyes when he pointed the gun at him haunted David's every waking moment. He tried to reach out to Sarah, to apologize, to explain, but she refused to answer his calls. She, too, was grappling with the weight of their secret, knowing that their actions had destroyed not just Michael's trust but the entire family. The tension in the Carter household reached a breaking point one evening when Michael finally confronted Sarah. The argument was explosive, their voices echoing through the house as years of pent-up frustration and pain came pouring out. Sarah admitted to the affair, her voice trembling as she begged for forgiveness. But Michael was beyond forgiveness. The man who had once been her rock, her protector, now looked at her with cold, unyielding anger. As the days passed, the atmosphere in Willow Creek grew increasingly uneasy. Rumors began to spread about the tension between the Carter brothers, and the townspeople couldn't help but notice the changes in Michael. He became withdrawn, his once commanding presence diminished by the weight of his grief. His work as sheriff suffered, and the town's trust in him began to waver. Then, on a cold, moonless night, tragedy struck. David and Sarah were found dead in their home, the victims of a brutal double murder. The news sent shockwaves through Willow Creek, leaving the town in a state of disbelief. The initial assumption was that Michael, consumed by rage and betrayal, had finally snapped. He was the prime suspect, and the evidence seemed to point squarely at him. But as investigators delved deeper into the case, they uncovered a web of secrets that complicated the narrative. Witnesses reported seeing Michael at the sheriff's office at the time of the murders, giving him a solid alibi. The focus of the investigation shifted, and soon, a new suspect emerged: Emma, Michael and Sarah's 16-year-old daughter. Emma had been struggling with the revelation about her true paternity. The knowledge that David, not Michael, was her biological father had shattered her sense of identity. She had overheard the confrontation between Michael and David in the barn, and the weight of the truth had been too much for her to bear. Consumed by anger and confusion, she had taken matters into her own hands, sneaking into David and Sarah's home and pulling the trigger. The revelation sent shockwaves through the town. Emma, a bright and promising teenager, was now at the center of a murder investigation. Michael was devastated, torn between his duty as a father and his duty as a lawman. He had spent his life upholding justice, but now he was faced with the unimaginable task of reconciling his love for his daughter with the gravity of her actions. As the investigation unfolded, the full extent of the family's secrets came to light. The affair between David and Sarah had been going on for years, a fact that left the townspeople reeling. The once respected Carter family was now the subject of gossip and speculation, their private pain laid bare for all to see. The climax of the story came when Emma confessed to the murders. Her voice was steady as she recounted the events of that fateful night, her words painting a picture of a young girl pushed to the brink by the weight of a truth she was never meant to bear. Michael, sitting in the courtroom, felt his heart break all over again as he listened to his daughter's confession. The trial that followed was a media sensation, drawing attention from across the country. Emma was charged with the double murder, and the case became a symbol of the devastating consequences of secrets and betrayal. Michael, racked with guilt and grief, resigned as sheriff and left Willow Creek, taking Jake and Lily with him. The family was forever broken, their lives shattered by the secrets they had tried to bury. The trial of Emma Carter became the defining moment in the history of Willow Creek. The small town, once known for its quiet charm and close-knit community, was now thrust into the national spotlight as the case captured the attention of media outlets across the country. The courtroom was packed every day, filled with townspeople, reporters, and curious onlookers who had come to witness the unraveling of a family torn apart by betrayal, secrets, and tragedy. Emma, now 16 years old, sat at the defendant's table, her face pale and expressionless. She had confessed to the murders of David and Sarah, but her motives and state of mind were the focus of the trial. The prosecution painted her as a cold-blooded killer, a teenager who had methodically planned and carried out the murders in a fit of rage. They presented evidence of her troubled behavior in the months leading up to the crime, her declining grades, her withdrawal from friends and family, and the chilling journal entries she had written, detailing her anger and confusion over the revelation about her true paternity. The defense, however, argued that Emma was a victim herself, a young girl pushed to the brink by the weight of a truth she was never meant to bear. They called psychologists to the stand, who testified about the profound impact such a revelation could have on a teenager's mental health. They spoke of the betrayal Emma felt, not just from David and Sarah, but from Michael, the man she had always believed to be her father. The defense painted a picture of a girl who had acted in a moment of overwhelming emotional distress, a girl who had been failed by the adults in her life. Michael sat in the courtroom every day, his heart breaking a little more with each passing moment. He listened as the prosecution and defense argued over his daughter's fate, his mind torn between his duty as a father and his duty as a lawman. He had spent his life upholding justice, but now he was faced with the unimaginable task of reconciling his love for Emma with the gravity of her actions. He couldn't help but blame himself. If he had handled the situation differently, if he had been more present, more understanding, maybe none of this would have happened. The trial reached its climax when Emma took the stand. The courtroom fell silent as she began to speak, her voice steady but filled with emotion. She recounted the events of that fateful night, her words painting a vivid picture of a young girl pushed to the edge. She spoke of the moment she overheard the confrontation between Michael and David in the barn, the moment she learned the truth about her paternity. She described the anger and confusion that had consumed her, the sense of betrayal that had left her feeling lost and alone. "I didn't know what to do," Emma said, her voice breaking. "I just wanted the pain to stop. I wanted everything to go back to the way it was before. But I knew that was impossible. So I did the only thing I could think of. I made it stop." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their meaning. The courtroom was silent, the only sound the faint rustling of papers and the occasional sniffle from the gallery. Even the reporters, usually so eager for a sensational story, seemed momentarily subdued by the raw emotion of Emma's testimony. In the end, the jury found Emma guilty of manslaughter, a lesser charge than the murder conviction the prosecution had sought. The judge sentenced her to 15 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 10. It was a bittersweet victory for the defense, but for Michael, it was a devastating blow. His daughter, the little girl he had raised and loved, would spend her formative years behind bars, paying for a crime born out of pain and betrayal. In the aftermath of the trial, Michael resigned as sheriff and left Willow Creek, taking Jake and Lily with him. The town, once a place of comfort and familiarity, now felt like a prison of memories and regrets. The Carter family was forever broken, their lives shattered by the secrets they had tried to bury. For Michael, the hardest part was coming to terms with his own role in the tragedy. He couldn't help but wonder if things would have turned out differently if he had handled the situation with more compassion, if he had been more present for Emma in her time of need. But the past was the past, and there was no changing it. All he could do now was try to pick up the pieces and move forward, for the sake of Jake and Lily. The story of the Carter family became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the devastating consequences of secrets and betrayal. It was a story that would be told and retold in Willow Creek for years to come, a story that would leave everyone who heard it questioning how well they truly knew the people closest to them. As the dust settled on the trial and the media frenzy began to fade, the town of Willow Creek was left to grapple with the aftermath of the tragedy. The once quiet streets now bore the weight of a story that had shaken the community to its core. For Michael Carter, life would never be the same. He had lost not only his wife and brother but also his daughter, who was now serving a 15-year sentence for the double murder. The home he had built with Sarah, once filled with laughter and love, now stood empty, a silent reminder of the family he had lost. Michael moved away from Willow Creek, taking Jake and Lily with him. They settled in a small town hundreds of miles away, a place where no one knew their names or their story. For Michael, it was a chance to start over, to rebuild his life and protect what was left of his family. But the scars of the past would always remain, a constant reminder of the choices that had led them to this point. Jake and Lily struggled to adjust to their new life. Jake, now 12 years old, had become withdrawn, his once curious and talkative nature replaced by a quiet sadness. Lily, just 8 years old, was too young to fully understand what had happened, but she sensed the tension and grief that hung over their new home. Michael did his best to shield them from the pain, but he knew that the truth would eventually come out. He dreaded the day when he would have to explain to Lily why her sister was gone and why their family had been torn apart. As the years passed, Michael tried to focus on the future. He found work as a security guard, a job that allowed him to provide for Jake and Lily without the pressures of his former role as sheriff. He attended counseling sessions, both for himself and for the children, hoping to help them heal from the trauma they had endured. But no amount of therapy could erase the memories of that fateful night or the guilt that Michael carried with him every day. Emma, now serving her sentence in a juvenile detention facility, struggled to come to terms with her actions. She spent her days reflecting on the choices she had made and the pain she had caused. Letters from Michael and her siblings were a lifeline, a reminder that she was still loved despite everything that had happened. But the weight of her guilt was a heavy burden, one that she would carry for the rest of her life. The story of the Carter family became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the devastating consequences of secrets and betrayal. It was a story that would be told and retold in Willow Creek for years to come, a story that would leave everyone who heard it questioning how well they truly knew the people closest to them. For Michael, The hardest part was coming to terms with his own role in the tragedy. He couldn't help but wonder if things would have turned out differently if he had handled the situation with more compassion, if he had been more present for Emma in her time of need. But the past was the past, and there was no changing it. All he could do now was try to pick up the pieces and move forward, for the sake of Jake and Lily. As the years passed, Michael found solace in the small moments of joy that life still had to offer. Watching Jake excel in school, seeing Lily's face light up with laughter, these were the moments that kept him going. He knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but he was determined to give his children the life they deserved, a life free from the shadows of the past. The story of the Carter family is a reminder that the truth, no matter how painful, can't stay hidden forever. But it's also a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to find hope and healing even in the darkest of times. What would you have done if you were in Michael's shoes? Would you have confronted David? Would you have handled the DNA revelation differently? Let us know in the comments below. Your thoughts and opinions matter. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with someone who appreciates true crime stories that make you think. And if you're not already subscribed, click that button and join our community for more gripping tales that explore the complexities of human nature.